Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit Am I the A-hole and it's by user Buseo21. Am I the a-hole for not giving my sister-in-law time to find alternative childcare before refusing to watch her son anymore? My 28 female husband, 33 male, has an older half-brother, 43 male, who has a son, 4, around our daughter's age, also 4. My sister-in-law, 36 female, half-brother's wife, works, but I do not. I am a stay-at-home wife because my husband worked in his 20s to build 2 pretty successful local businesses, and he works a lot, so it's better for our family for me to stay home. We also have a farm, so we have lots of land, and it's basically a kid's dream. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law spent their 20s traveling, so they don't really have their finances in order. They both work and struggle to make ends meet. My husband helps them out a lot, but he gets burnt out helping them with things, so he generally keeps his distance. He has tried to stay completely out of this issue. At first, I felt bad for my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, so I offered to help them with childcare with my nephew. I do this for free. They don't pay me anything to watch him. And it was great at first because my daughter had someone to play with while I took care of the farm and house chores. I quickly realized my nephew is not being parented well. I get that they both work, but they overindulge him to a point that is kind of ridiculous. He thinks everything is negotiable. No doesn't mean no. It means scream about it until the adults relent. He cries and screams when he doesn't get his way. He tests boundaries all the time and constantly tries to push against them. I see that his mother encourages this behavior. Every time he is upset, she tries to negotiate with him and usually just give him what he wants, but says, "We'll talk about it later at home when he's calmed down." I roll my eyes at this because I just know it isn't true. They don't address anything with him. I know because I spend every weekday with him and I feel like I'm constantly having to reparent him. For instance, one issue is that they have taught him he does not have to share. They tell him that if he doesn't want to share a toy, he doesn't have to. This causes a lot of problems at my house. My rule with my daughter is, if you want to hang out with your friends, you have to share. We put up toys that she genuinely doesn't want to share, but it's like 2 plush toys that are special to her, not all of her toys. Her dad and I have made it clear to her that we buy her toys to share, not to hoard. I expect the same thing of my nephew, and I have made this clear to him as well. If he brings a toy to my house and he doesn't want to share, I confiscate the toy so no one plays with it, and then I give it to his mom, telling her not to let him come back with it. She has always had an issue with how I handle sharing. She's tried to coach me on how to properly handle sharing, according to her. She expects me to essentially distract my child with another toy if her son doesn't want to share. I made it clear that when he's at my house, he has to follow my rules. I do not entertain them or manage their play. If a toy is causing problems, it disappears, period. They don't always have to play the same thing at the same time, but if they can't at least take turns with a toy, then it gets put away, and if it's his toy, then I tell him it won't be allowed back. I have preemptively confiscated toys that I've previously said were not allowed back when I've seen that he has them again. I used to give him second chances, but I quickly learned that it was just teaching him he could undermine my authority. His mom, however, constantly tries to undermine my authority. Once a week, I take them to the park. It's about a quarter mile down the road from our house, so I make the kids walk or ride their scooters or bikes. My nephew is lazy and always wants to be carried or pushed. I give a firm no, and he cries. But then his mom messaged me saying, "Son doesn't want to walk to the park anymore, so we came up with a plan. Why don't you take them to the water park? That way you all can drive and I'll leave you his car seat." I said no because the water park costs money. It's harder to watch 2 kids there, and I never agreed to carpool them anywhere. She then found another park on the other side of town and suggested that. Again, I did not agree to carpool my nephew anywhere. He knew about these attempts at rearranging our plans because he'd bring up how his mom said we could go to another park and then cry when I tell him I wasn't open to that. My nephew has caused a lot of issues that I ultimately blame his parents for, like taking one bite out of every strawberry in the bowl just to be spiteful so my daughter couldn't have any. That has happened multiple times with multiple snacks. He's also tried to sneakily steal toys and then his mom asking if he can borrow it when I check his bag and call him out on it. But my final straw with my nephew was when he started trying to encourage my daughter to push boundaries with me. I'd tell him he couldn't do something like climbing up the gate to the horse pasture and he'll just look at me and say to my daughter, "Climb up here with me." He's been doing this for a few weeks now, and I told his mother that if he was going to encourage my daughter to disrespect my rules, he would not be allowed back over. She essentially tried to defend him, saying, "It's age appropriate." She really just brushed it all off. Well, it happened again yesterday. We were baking cookies, and he decided to throw chocolate chips across the room. I told him to stop, and he ignored me and told my daughter to throw them with him. She was scared to do it because she knew it was against my rules. So then he had an absolute meltdown when I took him away from the kitchen and put him in timeout. He actually started throwing things around my living room and screaming at me. He kept coming back into the kitchen and I had to physically remove him over and over again. I have never had these issues with my own kid, so I was losing my mind. I called my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law ended up coming to pick him up early. I told him he wasn't welcome back, that I was done. Maybe I'm an a-hole for reaching my breaking point and not giving them more notice, but I thought I was being helpful. And I gave them plenty of warnings that his behavior was not acceptable or appropriate in my home. I gave advice on how to parent a little better. Maybe that makes me an a-hole since he's not my kid, but I don't know. I told her he wouldn't be allowed back multiple times, but this time I mean it. My sister-in-law thinks I'm an a-hole because I refuse to acknowledge that our children are just different, and he's not a bad kid, he just has a different temperament than my daughter. I don't think he's a bad kid. I think he's always been allowed to misbehave and he's been taught that if he has a violent, screaming and throwing meltdown, then he'll get his way. She's mostly mad, saying that she doesn't have time to figure out what she's going to do with him and she wants me to finish off the week. I just simply have reached my limit and do not want to continue watching him even for just a few more days. So am I the a-hole for not giving them a week to find another childcare option? Should I have given him more notice or time, or am I justified? No, OP, you're not the a-hole. You told them this would happen if things didn't change. They didn't. So now it's happening. It's called follow-through, something your sister-in-law clearly refuses to even try teaching her child. You offered free childcare out of kindness, not obligation. You set rules, gave multiple warnings, and dealt with disrespect, both from the kid and his parents. Your home isn't a battleground for reparenting someone else's child, and frankly, it's not your job to undo years of permissive, boundaryless parenting just because they're overwhelmed. If they decided to not take you seriously when you warned them and now they're scrambling, well, that's on them. You're not heartless, OP, you're just done being taken advantage of, and that's absolutely fair. So no, OP, you're not the a-hole, and I think these parents need to learn the same lesson as their kid. Actions have consequences. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's check out the community comments. Balas333 says, not the a-hole. My partner works with kids as her career and she is trained to handle and fix these behaviors. That's her job. If she wasn't getting paid for it, I would be begging her to stop because of how stressful it is. You're not getting paid to parent a kid that isn't yours. That alone gives you the right to stop at any point. It might not be the nicest thing, but you're totally justified. I'd also like to mention that you're not refusing to watch him anymore because of his behavior. Yes, it's an issue, but it's not the heart of the problem. The heart of the problem is that your brother-in-law and sister-in-law are undermining your authority over your own home and just straight up ignoring you at every turn. And you know, raising a monster. Make sure to tell them that next time they talk to you about it. It wasn't their son's behavior, but theirs. And OP responds, "Thank you, I feel seen. I actually feel really bad for my nephew because I love him despite his behavior, but it really is the way his parents are handling it for me." Bikar says, "You have every right to be angry and refuse to let the kid into your house. The fact that your sister-in-law is a horrible parent isn't your fault. And she's brought this on herself by raising such a brat. She's parenting the same way she was raised, and it's easy to see that her son is going to end up just like her, entitled and believing that that can wind their way to whatever it is they want. That said, your sister-in-law is going to be pissed that you didn't give her formal notice. She's going to be pissed whether you think you're justified or not, and she's going to use this as a way to stir up bad feelings between you and the rest of the family." And OP responds, "That's exactly what I'm worried about. I feel like I have been walked all over and I have to do this for myself to enforce my own boundaries, but I'm afraid other people in the family are going to see me as the villain." And Valkyrie Mom says, "Not the a-hole. It sounds like they are creating a monster. However, I also wonder how you enforced your rules and why your daughter is so compliant. It is normal for toddlers to push boundaries. Excessive compliance creates its own issues for children." And OP responds, "Oh, my daughter is not an angel. She has meltdowns, she pushes boundaries, but she also loses privileges and gets time out. And she learns that if I say no, I mean no. She definitely also misbehaves sometimes though. I think she and my nephew do have different temperaments as well, which is why I have put up with my nephew until now. It's just obvious that they are not following up with any of the problematic behaviors at home like I ask of them." Alright, well, the community agrees OP is not the a-hole. It is on the brother-in-law and sister-in-law to parent their child, and OP doesn't have to keep doing it. So now, let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. First of all, I really appreciate all the responses to this post. I was really frustrated when I made it, but also feeling guilty because I love my nephew and did not want to cut him completely out of our lives like this. But I'm standing by my decision to no longer provide childcare because of these responses. My husband was tempted to just pay them to get a babysitter to finish off the week, but I let him go through the comments. And the point about it being free childcare and not owing them the same kind of notice as a daycare convinced him that we don't need to feel bad if sister-in-law has to take a few sick days in order to deal with the situation. I also was on the fence about taking him back next week. I knew I needed at least this week off, but some people also reiterated something I already knew, which is that we live on a farm and not following rules on the farm can be dangerous or even life-threatening. We have horses, cows, bulls, and pigs, all potentially dangerous animals, especially if you can't be trusted to respect boundaries. I've been worried about this for a while, even though I never take the kids into the pastures or barn by myself. And having it confirmed in the comments is eye-opening in that it's not just my own anxiety, but a very real risk. If my nephew were to jump the gate, I don't even want to imagine how that could go. I get that some people don't agree with my rules around sharing. My sister-in-law has tried to inform me multiple times about how bad forced sharing is, and that's fine. To each their own. In our house, we share with our guests. And if you're going to bring things to my home just so you cannot share them with my daughter, then they have no place in my home. Anyway, my sister-in-law is planning to take the rest of the week off and hoping to get my nephew into a daycare soon. My mother-in-law has reached out and agrees with me. She doesn't want to, but has offered to watch him starting next week until they can figure out daycare. She expects to be paid something for her time though. I guess she always felt I was a little too generous with them and they need to be prepared to be a little more financially responsible. I hope we can still find time to get the cousins together, but I think for the foreseeable future, we all just need a little space. Well, it'll be good for you for standing firm on your boundaries. You're right, your brother-in-law and sister-in-law need to figure things out. And it's not your problem anymore, and it never was. So here's wishing you the best, OP. Take care and thanks for sharing. And now let's move on to the next post that also has an update. This post is from the subreddit Marriage, and it's by user NoWord1281. husband is appearing in gym girl TikTok videos. Alright, I hope I'm not about to come across as crazy. The situation is this. My female 27 husband, male 28, and I go to a local gym a few times a week. He mainly lifts weights and is definitely one of the stronger guys there. There are several fitfluencers, both male and female, that frequent our gym, and over the past few months, the girls have started to be really friendly with him. I don't mind that really, it's fine to ask for a spot or form check, but what I didn't realize, and he didn't either at first, is that he was ending up on their Instagram and TikTok videos. I found out because a friend who follows one of these girls sent me a reel asking if I knew my husband was in these videos. When I asked him if he knew, he said he assumed that he was, but didn't realize they had so many followers. The thing that really weirded me out is how the comment section had a lot of comments about how this girl needs to get with her gym crush. She had even pinned some and had not mentioned anywhere that he is married. I'm not upset at him, but I just feel like her behavior is really odd. I don't want to be controlling, but I also don't really feel comfortable with her being around him, especially if I'm not present. I guess I'm just asking for advice on how to bring this up with hubby without coming across as controlling. OP, in my opinion, you're not being controlling. Your husband is unknowingly featured in videos by a gym influencer who flirts and pins comments about him being her gym crush with no mention that he's married. It's disrespectful. I would simply tell him, this makes me uncomfortable. Not because I don't trust you, but because she's publicly acting like you're single. That's not okay with me. You're not asking him to stop going. You're asking for awareness and boundaries. Totally fair. And what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's check out the community comments. Cecily Ann says, does this girl know that he's a married man? If she does, then she's being extremely disrespectful. Asking for respect in this situation isn't being controlling, it's about setting healthy boundaries. Talk to your husband and let him know how uncomfortable these TikTok videos made you feel. Especially with people in the comments saying things like she needs to get with her gym crush. It's his responsibility to address the issue, set boundaries, and ask her to stop recording him and posting him on TikTok. Let me leave this place says, the first step is probably bringing it up and explaining the comments pinned about getting with her gym crush. Any reasonably well-adjusted adult shouldn't take this as controlling. Nothing wrong inherently with bringing it up so he's aware. It's possible he doesn't even notice because he doesn't care, or it's possible he enjoys the attention in the comments. Men don't tend to be desired publicly that often, so it could be an ego boost thing too. And Dopey responds, yeah, I guess he doesn't know about the comments. I've just dealt with some extreme insecurity in our marriage in the past and don't want to put him through that again. I was actually genuinely overbearing partner in the past and he loved me through it, so I'm trying to trust him here. And Divorced Life says, first, he needs to shut it down. Second, he needs to involve gym management if they didn't clearly tell him he'd be in videos. I go to the gym daily for at least an hour. I have zero gym crushes because I'm there to lift, not flirt. Her behavior is inappropriate, and if the roles were reversed and a man was routinely including a woman who then received objectifying comments about her, it'd be very obviously inappropriate. This is the exact same thing. Your husband goes to the gym to lift, not to be videoed and fawned over on the internet. And Dopey responds, he knew that they were filming it and assumed some got posted online, but he didn't know that a couple of these girls have hundreds of thousands of followers. He isn't on social media, so it just flew over his head that it might be a possibility. When I told him how many followers they had, he said, damn, she isn't really that strong. Lol, I love him for that. Well, the community agrees that OP needs to talk to her husband and he should be the one shutting this thing down. So let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. Okay people, I appreciate you all so much for commenting on my post yesterday and validating that I'm not being crazy. Last night, I brought up the situation with the influencers again and told my husband that comments were being left on the videos that made me uncomfortable and showed him. Upon seeing the pinned comments and me explaining who pins a comment and how, lol, I think his words were, damn, that's sketchy. I sort of balked at telling him to do anything, but he told me he would tell the girls that they can't film him anymore and to get rid of the pinned comments. We went to the gym this evening and I saw him go talk to her, and now a couple hours later, those comments are gone. Smiley face. He said the girl was super embarrassed and apologized a bunch. I'm so glad I talked to him because now I feel loads better. And there it is once again. Communication wins the day. Congratulations, OP. Good for you and your husband. Take care and thanks for sharing. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out. So here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.